There and your life.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first Pillar 2, the AIB Pillar 2 Advisory Committee meeting. We are excited to be here. We have a fantastic agenda looking at the practices of diverse hiring. But before we jump into that, I want to go ahead and introduce myself and introduce some of our board members. So my name is John Silke. I am currently a middle school math teacher in Montgomery County Public Schools and have had the honor of serving as the chair of this committee for the last 2 years. Our team is going to look at leadership roles for the upcoming year very soon. But let me go ahead and we're going to do some quick introductions. We're going to go ahead and popcorn style it. We're going to pass it off to Rob.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rob Willoughby. I'm the Director of Administrative Services for Caroline County Public Schools, and this is my first meeting as a member of the Pillar 2 Advisory Group. So excited to meet everyone and work with everyone.
And Rob, do you want to popcorn it and pass it off to somebody else?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, sure. Let's see. Brian, next person on my screen.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to see familiar faces. Welcome to the new advisory board members. I'm Brian King. I'm a principal in Charles County, and I will pass to Devora.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Devora Danielson. I've been with the committee just about a few months now, I think since last spring. And I have been serving as a career and technical ed teacher for Prince George's County. And I will pass it over. Let's see. Is that a student we have with us? Obia?
Hi, my name is Obienuju Mba. I'm a student at Carroll County, and this is my first year here, so I'm really excited to, learn the ropes and yeah. Justin?
Hello, my name is Justin Robinson. I serve as a numeracy coach supporting middle school mathematics in Prince George's County Public Schools. And I am here as a member of the AIB, and I support Pillar 2 mostly. So I will pass it along to, is it, oh, Trish doesn't, I guess LaShawn, but you're one of our strategic facilitators, LaShawn? Okay. Please, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself nevertheless?
Sure. LaShawn Smith, and I support Kent County Public Schools as their strategic facilitator. And I'll pass it on to Wells.
Thanks, LaShawn. My name is Wales Wilson. I'm the strategic facilitator for Washington County. And Candace, why don't you go?
Candace Kenyatta. I'm the strategic facilitator for Somerset County Public Schools. And I'm passing, I think, to Patricia. She might be the only person we haven't called out.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Patricia Twitty. I'm an assistant principal in Prince George's County. I am super excited to hear a lot of the counties from the Eastern Shore on the call and adding to the conversation. And I'm excited for another year or two serving on Pillar 2.
All right, I think that is everyone. So I am going to pass the mic off to Brian. I want to thank Brian in advance for considering this fantastic topic for our first AIB Pillar 2 committee meeting. So Brian, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, John. And again, welcome to our guests. Thank you for being here. Just to kind of set up where we're going to go with today's meeting. We all as a group committed to looking at a recent report that was submitted to the AIB. The title of the report, Progress in Increasing the preparation and diversity of teacher candidates and new teachers in Maryland. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share some highlights from the report, some slides, and then we've got our 3 strategic facilitators that are each going to share their work with an LEA around this same topic, and then we can open a discussion. And I think that this format is going to be especially insightful, mostly because we're going to balance hard data with the experience of people working in our school systems. And I think those are 2 great ingredients to put together to come to some balanced discussion that's rooted in experience and data. So like any good teacher, I'm going to start a timer on my phone because we all know tendencies. We say 10 minutes and we look down and it's been 17. So there goes my timer. I'm going to share my slides. I get a thumbs up from someone seeing this. Good. Okay, so again, here's the title of the report. You can see that it was published by the Longitudinal Data System in conjunction with MSDE and the Higher Education Commission. The first piece of data, Educator Prep Programs, that's an acronym you'll see throughout the presentation, talks about the scale of prep programs in our state. You can see about 6,000 in traditional programs, about 900 in alternative programs, about a 7-to-1 ratio. Recent trends show increases of 5 to 10% in traditional, and alternative has been relatively stable over the last couple of years. You can also see the demographics of enrolled candidates. I won't read all the numbers to you. And you can also see gender demographics. Both of those sets of data are very stable over many years, like over 5 years. You're talking very minor changes. This next slide speaks to completer demographics. So before it was enrolled, and these are people completing. You see the top 2 columns are traditional versus alternative. So you can review those data. Certain things are stable for certain race and ethnicity. And then in other areas, we see pretty big changes in the composition of program completers. The academic profile of the candidate. So this speaks to the quality of their high school experience and how ready they are for post-secondary education. You can see that 36% meet all 3 standards. The one that caught my eye was 76% have over a 3.0 GPA in high school, which is pretty impressive. And this was stable data for the last couple years. And if you notice differences in reporting years, some data I guess becomes available quicker than others. I always try to include most recent data. As far as retention goes for recent completers, you see that about 70% of completers are still teaching after 3 years in the state, almost identical to teaching in their grade level of program within 3 years. And then you see the gross number of completers over the last 4 or 5 academic years. Location, a lot of discussion around Maryland being an import state, and that's what this data speaks to. You can see that the in Maryland column for prep programs, you see pretty consistent and significant declines. The out of state, you see from 2017 to 2018, it also declines, but it's a lot more stable. The experienced professionals from out of state, meaning that they're not direct graduates of a prep program, they have prior professional experience. But the final column really speaks to this idea of import. The percentage of graduates from programs in Maryland over the last reported years has dropped either 6 or 8%, and a cumulative that puts you at 14%. So in gross numbers and percentage of new teachers, those are pretty significant declines. There's also been a lot of recent discussion about licensure and the assessments that are required for initial licensure or to maintain licensure. And you see again a chronological reporting of the pass rates that these educator prep programs are reporting to the state. And so over a 3 or 4 year period, we go from 94% of candidates passing down to most recent data being 80% of teachers passing. I also wanted to give some time to a couple of scholarships or grants. They've come up in our prior meetings, and they were pretty heavily featured in this report. And this report is obviously a whole lot more detail. I'm really trying to just skim for the highlights to feed our discussion. The first scholarship to talk about is a state program, Teaching Fellows for Maryland Scholarship. You can see when it began, you can see the benefits. The commitment for the candidate is to teach in a public school with 50% or more of free and reduced price meals. This is a state-funded program. And this gives you a bit of idea of scale of the program. In academic year 20, under $1 million awarded to 58 different recipients. Several years later, $3.5 million awarded to almost 200 recipients. So we're seeing a big scale up in terms of people accessing the Teaching Fellows Scholarship. I also thought it was interesting they gave undergraduate versus graduate numbers of grants awarded. So you see that this is mostly an undergraduate fellowship, scholarship, although it's a pretty decent uptick to graduate students taking advantage of this, nearing 20%, so almost 1 in 5 students is a graduate student. So Teaching Fellows, again, being a state scholarship program. There's also a federal program that many Maryland teacher candidates take advantage of. It's a grant, so $4,000 a year. You see the maximums. The commitment is very similar. It's a year for each year that you are awarded this grant, so up to 4 years of teaching in a high-need, low-income school. And in terms of scale, it's a bit more stable than the Teaching Fellows. You can see about 200 recipients, about $500,000. And this is a bit more of a balanced grant program in terms of undergraduate to graduates that are accessing. So some of those data points, I think, help understanding both the state and federal side of support for the profession and just the scale to which people are accessing the funds. National board certification is a massive topic of conversation. We all know that. You can see the number of MBC teachers in Maryland, a slight decline, according to this report. However, one of the encouraging signs is almost 2,000 educators in the state began the certification process recently. And there is a decent concentration of these teachers in those 4 named counties. It's also important to note that most students in the state are in those 4 counties. So there is a degree of scale that, yes, a lot of the MBC teachers are there, but a lot of the state students are also in those counties. Teacher experience levels. You can see the total teachers in the state, 67,000, almost 68,000. Average year is about 12. And those numbers decline slightly when you talk about disadvantaged or low performing schools, likely to have a couple years less experience. There is also something to note on this slide. You see the big jump from academic year 21 to 23 in terms of the number of schools that are identified as disadvantaged and low performing, skyrocketed from 33,000 to 56,000. So that's also a topic that we could explore and discuss some of the reasons behind that. As far as new teacher, race and ethnicity, these are all percentages for the past 3 years. You can see the percentage of white teachers in the state has declined 10 percentage points over these 3 years. Teachers identifying as Black, African American has climbed 9 percentage points. And then you see the other race and ethnicity identifications on the last 2 rows. And the full report for folks that want to see more narrative or more tables is available on the AIB website. I have 15 seconds left on my timer, so wow, right on it. Okay. So I know that was kind of a blitz of data. I know that the committee members, we've already reviewed the data. This is also for people watching our meeting to have some background. And the next portion of the meeting, we'd like to hear from each of the strategic facilitators, some of their work. It might connect to some of these data points. So I'll let Rachel invite each of our guests. And again, to all 3 of you, thank you for sharing your time with the committee.
Perfect. Brian, really appreciate you pulling together the highlights of that information. I think it's interesting to just kind of pause on just the key highlights that you've raised. And I think we could probably talk about this for a few hours, but we're going to keep it contained here. So today we thought it would be helpful to bring some strategic facilitators. And I'd like to give you a little bit of background about what a strategic facilitator is before we turn it over to them to kind of share reactions and also just some information about what's happening in the counties that they support. The AIB stood up a grant last year, and we approved and vetted strategic facilitators. The goal was to be able to provide one-on-one support, someone who has expertise in education and facilitation, strategic thinking, strategic planning, and to be able to offer them to the LEAs to assist in any area of blueprint work. It was really up to the LEA to identify the focus areas as long as it pertained to blueprint implementation. We are quite fortunate to have an amazing bench of strategic facilitators around the state. Last year, we had 22 LEAs and the CTE committee that were participating with the grant. This year, our grant program looks a little bit different. We've expanded the focus, but we've maintained our strategic facilitators. Many of them are returning to the same county that they supported last year. And the real goal is that the strategic facilitators get to partner with the local school district to understand the context, the local challenges, the local hurdles, whereas sometimes we keep more of a focus at statewide implementation. And so the strategic facilitators were really able to peel back and to dig deep and to question and wonder and to help identify areas of success and areas of challenge with blueprint implementation. So today we are joined by 3 strategic facilitators representing kind of the far corners of our state. We've got Washington County with Wales Wilson here, and then we have 2 of our Eastern Shore districts with LaShawn in Kent County and Candace in Somerset County. We did not prearrange who wants to go first, so I'm kind of taking a quick look to see if anybody wants to volunteer to go first. We're okay. Awesome. So
I don't.
Pass it to you, LaShawn. I appreciate that. And then I think I saw Wales. Maybe you'll second, and then we'll go to Candace third. So Brian, is it about how much time does each person have about so they can get their handy timer set?
Thinking about 5 to 7 minutes. So then that leaves us a good chunk for discussions and questions.
Thank you. All right, LaShawn, all yours.
All right, sounds perfect. So one, thank you for the opportunity. The first thing I want to do is lift up that Kent County has put a lot of energy, a lot of effort into ensuring that their teaching staff is reflective of their student body. But just like others across the state, it's one of those areas of enduring challenge. And so one of the first things that I was tasked with is really was really to take a deep look into what their practices were. They just wanted a different set of eyes, different set of experiences to come through. And so essentially what I developed and implemented was more or less an audit around their hiring practices. And so I ended up with 9 recommendations across 3 areas. So the areas were recruitment recommendations, so recommendations for recruitment, recommendations related to interviews and their selection process, and then recommendations related to retention and attrition. And so in putting together that audit, I looked at a variety of sources of information, conducted interviews with folks, and just really tried to have it be as comprehensive as it could be without it being too intrusive. And so part of our phase 2 work will be standing up these recommendations within the district. So some of the recommendations are really just acknowledging the work that's already being done and asking folks to continue or to think slightly differently about things that they're already doing. Others are to begin doing certain things. And then others are related to engaging in maybe novel spaces, novel kinds of conversations with their, IET partners around how they can better support folks within the community and folks who are interested in becoming teachers across their district. So that really was the bulk of the work. And again, as I said, part of phase 2 will be standing up those recommendations within the district. Just to give you a few, one recommendation was just engaging in stay interviews. So often we use exit surveys with folks who leave the district, but do we take the time to engage with our current employees and find out the reasons that they stay? What is the reason for their longevity? And so leveraging the information that we gain from that to better support employees, and also use that as a recruitment tool as well. And then also even offering incentives and referral programs. There are folks within our communities that are interested in education, but sometimes they just need someone to lift their name forward or serve as a sponsor for them or a mentor for them. Sometimes it's hard to see ourselves in a space where we don't see folks who look like us. And so serving in those kinds of roles, even with those who are in the community or those who are within the schools. And so those are just 2 of the 9 recommendations that have been put forth to the district.
That's wonderful. Thank you, LaShawn, for sharing that work and those specific recommendations. I think, what was the agreed upon order? Was it Candace, are you next? Yes. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
So a lot of what LaShawn had to share, we're seeing similar efforts in Washington County. So starting, there was a lot of analysis done in the beginning to really understand, in order for us to make efforts and see progress with Pillar 2, what was the needs assessment. And one of the things that we sort of similarly acknowledged was that if 40% of the students in Washington County identify as students of color, we have 4% of our staff currently as people of color, and we need to do something different. And so a big focus for us has become on a culture of inclusion. One of the things the district has really changed in the last few years is a large portion of immigrant families moving into the area. And so just our student body has sort of shifted faster than our staffing. And we also acknowledge that we did not have the culture we wanted in order to not only recruit and attract, but then retain staff of color. And so that has been a huge priority for the district around sort of explaining and developing skills in our central office as well as our school leaders in what developing a culture of inclusion looks like, starting with our staff and then hoping to translate that to our students as well. The district just completed their strategic plan for the next few years, and culture of inclusion in various aspects is a big priority. So I'm really excited that the work that we're doing Pillar 2 is now even translating to some of the big priorities of the district as a whole. through that, we came up with a big focus on retention being the best recruitment strategy for us. And so what we're really doing is using that culture of inclusion, messaging and training, and a lot of the things that LaShawn mentioned about really educating and coaching our leaders around how are we retaining the staff that we have. And that includes, the stay conversations and really even that culture of inclusion, but also thinking about how are we developing our staff and helping them feel like they are supported in their role. We are using a lot of data as well of why are people staying and why are people leaving our district. And two big focus areas for this year is really understanding how can we support teacher workload and the work environment. And so the culture of inclusion effort really ties in as an outcome of that feedback that we're getting from staff. So things that we're doing in addition to is similar to Kent County, refining our hiring and selection process. There are certainly best practices out there that we have not embraced historically and have not been consistent across our candidates. So we are instilling some of those practices, but really focusing in on consistency. And so that we can have best practices are implemented for every candidate and eliminate some of the potential biases that may be slipping into the process throughout. So that is a big focus of ours, as well as thinking about our value proposition. Washington County is not necessarily what people think of when they think about Maryland. We're competing with each other at this point, and we're sort of centrally located across 3 states. So we've been rewriting our value proposition based on why staff stay, why staff join our district, but then thinking about sort of what is our competitive advantage. And we're really gathering a lot more data with recruitment as a result of what is attracting our applicants of color and what are some of those strategies that we can then use in years ahead. Some other things that we've been talking a lot about too is the teacher preparation, especially for those conditionally certified teachers. And we're really thinking a lot about job embedded professional development. We think that that's a huge opportunity and need, and not sure that our institutions of higher ed are always supporting this in the highest quality way. So I think bigger than the district itself, one of the things that they are doing is expanding their teacher orientation and teacher induction program to be 3 years, so that we can sort of continue to support teachers that are new to the role beyond just that first year, and collaborating with some of our higher ed partners that are developing teachers. But as we all know, and the data is showing, nowhere in the country are we enrolling enough teachers into the pipeline. But I will say that, the data came out recently that Maryland had a 9% increase, which is still not enough to fill the need in the state, but it is a step in the right direction. And I have to think that the work that Blueprint is doing to create a change in the conversation around what it means to be a teacher, these are exciting opportunities that we have. And I look forward to some of the initiatives the state's doing to help push higher ed to really think differently about what teacher preparation looks like, and how can we really think more about the job embedded model and coaching. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Wow, everybody's got a strong fidelity to their timers today. I love this. Another great share out. And I have plenty of time to discuss all this great information. Okay, Candace, you are up.
Well, that's a lot of pressure. So I'm like, let me get my timer up and make sure that I stay within the allotted time. So I'm going to start much like LaShawn and Wales. First, just acknowledging that Somerset has been thinking deeply about this particular issue, and has put a lot of effort into trying to understand where the needs exist and how they can respond. And I also want to name transparently that one of the reasons I wanted to be here today is because I think part of my role as a strategic facilitator is to know what's going on in these spaces, so that I can provide these insights back to the district as they are thinking through the challenges that they have and where they want to move forward. So in my work with Somerset, we spent a lot of our Pillar 2 focus and on really thinking deeply about career ladder, just transparently. And so as a part of that work, I think some of the things that Wells brought up in particular, just how to create more opportunity within the district, and the career ladder being a significant way to really invest in professionalizing the role of teaching and providing support and opportunities for leadership and access to just growth opportunities within the district are extremely important. In terms of the question around diversity, understanding that the data, of course, has shown that Somerset has one of the largest gaps. The biggest focus has really been on two things. I would say one, understanding the data with more depth, and also partnerships, and thinking about the role that partnerships will play. Much like Washington County, when people think Maryland, they don't think Somerset. And one of the biggest challenges has been how to recruit a diverse set of teachers into the Somerset County area. So one major partnership that Somerset has leaned on for this work is Insight, the Insights Group, and really has been analyzing and engaging with the data to best understand what their district-specific needs are in this area, and also things that they can do to really start to shift the data. What came out of some of that work was three major areas to focus on. One, and again, this I think aligns with Washington very well, is increasing visibility and making sure that they are marketing in a way that attracts high quality, diverse candidates to their work. And so thinking about how they can leverage a deeper marketing strategy to both attract local as well as external candidates into the area. They also look to make specific goals around where they wanted to see their numbers increase in terms of diversity. So thinking about an overall 30% increase in applicants across roles within the district, with a focus on ensuring that that we're looking at positions not just across the district, but also by building. And then finally, partnerships with universities and schools to really make sure that they are capitalizing on opportunities for teaching candidates to matriculate into the district. They have a current partnership with Notre Dame and have been working through that partnership and the Grow Your Own program to really try and bring candidates who are coming out of that program into the district. One other thing I noted in my time with them, I got an opportunity to spend some time on the ground with principals who had more informal Grow Your Own activities operating in their buildings. And so I think that's a specific area of both strength and opportunity to leverage partnerships with building level leaders who are investing in their paraprofessionals and others who support students that are interested in transitioning from those roles into teaching in the district. The only last thing I think I would note is the district has also been thinking about which activities are much like Washington. I think I heard you say, Wells, like what are the recruitment specific activities that are garnering the most response from diverse candidates, and really trying to invest more in those activities, and in places where maybe they're not seeing the response that they want, making a decision to not continue to invest as much in those kinds of marketing and recruitment activities. So I think that's kind of a brief overview, but I think a lot of alignment between what Wells and LaShawn have shared. I think the one conversation we haven't yet had, but I think critical and will be critical ongoingly, is retention. But they've seen that the district has seen very little turnover at the leader level and teacher level. And so I think the big piece here right now is how do we attract and recruit people into the district, and use what we know about what keeps people there to keep those people that we attract engaged.
Great, thank you, and agreed. I think there is a lot of alignment from the work that each of the three of you are doing, but then there's also some differentiation, based on the unique needs of the LEA that you're partnered with. So, we've got about 20 minutes left in our meeting. So at this point, to committee members, whether you have a direct question or a notice or a wondering about what you've listened to or what you learned in the report, I will open it up. I think we might get more out of our discussion if we do use raise your hand type features, so we're not stepping on each other's toes with unmuting and things. So if there's anyone that would like to get the conversation started. Oh, okay, Patricia, yes, thank you. Sorry, I glanced away. There's the hand. Gotcha.
Okay, Brian. Hello, everyone. So thank you all so much for being here. There are two things that I want to highlight really quick. So the first one around recruitment, as I have shared multiple times, I was recruited from Alabama when I moved to the Eastern Shore and taught a significant 4 years in Queen Anne's County. And so I will just once again put a plug in for that, creating a support system and having people in the county that if I'm moving here from California, Texas, or somewhere, like just creating those once a month opportunities for us to be able to get together, to travel somewhere, just so you feel like you're building like this family outside of a family. And then also, even though the blueprint has raised the salary to $60,000, depending on where you live in Maryland, that's not always a significant amount of money. So even trying to work through, especially in the counties on the Eastern Shore, some of those housing barriers, having partnerships, maybe there's someone who rents houses there that are willing to negotiate or work with housing prices for a time period. The other thing that I think was really interesting, and I can't remember who said something about the career ladder. And when I looked at the map that was in the report, most of the National Board teaching certificated educators were in like Montgomery, Anne Arundel, Prince George's, and Howard County, I believe it was. But many or most of the other places, and I think Kent County was like less than 5, a lot of them are less than 50. So I just am really curious about how, thinking, and we had conversations about a career ladder that is not the same for state, but to prevent some of those, like, well, I work in this county, but if I go to this county, I don't have to be nationally board certified to work my way up the career ladder. So I was just curious if anything that you all were doing to encourage, support, or, increase the numbers of MBTC teachers in your district.
And strategic facilitators, feel free to unmute if a comment or question comes to mind while you're listening to our reactions to what you shared.
Well, just a disclaimer for Kent. Kent is the smallest district within the state. So I think when you're counting numbers, they're always going to be at the lowest. But I think when you look at percent of population, then you'll probably get a truer representation of the number of teachers that are pursuing that. And Kent does have a very robust plan to engage their teachers in pursuing their national board certification.
LaShawn, I can add on briefly there. I believe that there were 8 teachers pursuing it in Kent, now that it's become a priority and now that it's really being pushed. So I think there was 1 who was retiring, 1 who is certified and remaining, and I believe it was 8 last year who began work towards national board. And I think that size does matter here. Like when we're thinking about these districts, Montgomery, Anne Arundel County, and Howard County, and I forgot the 4th one as well, Patricia. But I got 3 different ones than you did. So the 4 counties that have a large percentage of national boards, like I was one of them in Anne Arundel County, it's been pushed for 20 some years. Like it's been incentivized and really pushed. Other districts were doing different strategies. And so it's new information to some of these districts that are starting to bring it out. But we've seen tremendous numbers. And if anyone's interested to know for their county, how many people started pursuing last year, now that these new incentives are in place, in the LEA submissions that were turned in May, There's a data appendix, and there's also questions relating to national boards. You can actually click on each county and look at their national board data for the past school year to be able to see how many people are pursuing. We did, I think nationally, the National Board Organization let us know that we're kind of top of the nation right now for being a smaller state, but we have a very large percentage of our population pursuing national boards now.
Rachel, thank you for sharing that. That was actually part of what I wanted to share. It's just that I think in general, helping, and this is part of the conversation we had in Somerset last year, and we'll continue to have, is just helping people wrap their heads around the value and why it's so important to invest in this additional level of certification beyond, just kind of how I think people have been talking about it in the past. And I think where you've got more foundation there, you can move farther faster. And I think what a lot of, at least in Somerset, I think we're building the foundation and the investment in both career ladder and national board cert. And I think that the more teachers across the state get excited and we kind of can build some energy, right? I think there's so many things that are marketing related and communication related. And I think the better we get at clear communication, marketing, excitement around these things, the more we can see across the board, and it will definitely impact and affect the smaller counties who are trying to get these things off the ground.
And I think you were the next hand up.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brian. So I heard a lot of really great strategies. I heard one of them sort of talking about how to retain. I'm curious to hear, I guess, what are some of the bigger challenges or barriers as you're putting forward a lot of these great proposals that you're hitting that could be preventing you from implementing some of these great plans. I forget, I feel like I heard somebody talk about the 3-year induction program and mentoring. And of course, all the things we're trying to do have some cost. And while the blueprint is giving lots of money, there's always some trade-offs. So I'm curious to hear what are some realistic challenges and what can we as a Pillar 2 advisory sort of help raise to the AIB or others to help think about how we overcome some of those challenges?
Happy to jump in here. One of the things that struck me when starting to work with Washington County, because Pillar 2 was like the #1 priority, and I think we've talked about so much today of just foundational best practices with hiring had sort of slipped a little bit. And to be honest, the biggest challenge and the reason why is because of the staffing model for the team. There are about 9 people doing all HR and talent work in Washington County. And in former districts that I've worked in, that type of scale is just unbelievable. I every time I talk to them, I'm like, I can't believe what we're trying to do with this size team, but let's figure out what we can strategize. And so it's thinking with the team of what is the right staffing model, because every team feels like they're understaffed and don't have the capacity they need. And so we're trying to figure out where is the juice worth the squeeze. And so one of the things I've been working with them on is what's the ideal hire selection process? What are the fine tuning that we can do within our capacity? What can I do to help, behind the scenes really push them up and support them almost like a chief of staff in many ways of keeping the trains on track so that they're invested in these changes, but helping to pull the best practices and be like, here's an example, how can we refine it so that we're doing the legwork a little bit for them to sort of help add that extra capacity. But manpower is definitely one of them. And I think a lot of it is going to be helping to support and change some of the strategies that have been happening on teams and in schools. Because, for example, one of the things I hear is I don't need to change what I'm doing selection wise. I've been hiring teachers for 20 years. It has, it's worked for me in the past. The problem isn't me. The problem is there aren't enough candidates. And so there's going to be some mindset challenges that we're going to have to slowly pull back and really think about how are we reshaping the conversation around retention is the best recruitment strategy. And if we change this culture of inclusion and really think about some of the system-wide changes that start to support that the candidates, we can actually sort of develop them while giving sort of this word of mouth campaign its best roots. And we all know the best way to recruit new teachers is to give a top-notch education to the kids who are in our schools now so that they are being exposed to and thinking about careers. So, I could talk about some of the challenges forever, but I think those are the three big ones.
Well, and I think it's a great segue to my comment. And thank you, John, for the question. And Wells, I definitely agree with you completely. And for Kent County, take that team of 9 and divide it by a third. So for me, probably the big lift. So we've got this incredible district. They're really willing to think outside the box and be innovative in their thinking, but that's not always the case when we're talking with folks outside of the school system. So if there are ways to leverage the understanding in our colleges and universities about how this also serves them well, to think creatively, whether it's about maybe splitting a position between a university and a college in the district. So you've got a third, that cost sharing, but just being really creative and at the very least, having these conversations to think creatively about retention, about recruitment, and about maybe accelerating folks through these programs so that we can get a more certified teachers, more diverse folks within the workforce. So getting colleges and universities to be willing to think as creatively as districts are right now.
Great discussion. Rob, I think you were up next.
Sure. So kind of three things, just sort of from my perspective, just kind of looking at the data. One is, and kind of echoing what Wales said, we're a district of 1,150 employees, I'm sorry. And we have 4 members of our HR team. And one of them is a dedicated recruiter, but the only way that we got that was leveraging Title II funds to pay for it. And so, as we go to the budget table, and Blueprint does a lot of fantastic things, but, we're adding positions in the classroom. We're adding positions in finance as we go to money follows the student and funding follows the student and things like that. And so our department is not one that we're typically looking to add positions, but that ratio, like you said, and Wales kind of made that point, it's a lot of work with very, very few people. And so it's just one of those things to kind of take a look at. The other thing is in that slide deck, one of the things that I think you pointed out was that out-of-state teacher preparation programs have remained constant or seen a little bit of growth, while in-state has declined. And one of the things that I will say is in Caroline, which, I'm glad, we talked about Kent and Somerset, and we're kind of right in the middle. We're the shore county with no shore, which is what makes us kind of interesting. But we found that one of the best ways to diversify our teaching staff is to grow our own and grow our support staff into those teaching positions. However, these are working professionals that are working in our buildings all day long. And so when they come to me, they're either coming to me and saying, I want to be a teacher and I haven't finished my bachelor's degree, or I have finished my bachelor's degree, but I don't have teacher certification. And then I'm trying to point them in a direction to complete those requirements. And I will just tell you that 9 times out of 10, I'm pointing them to an out-of-state preparation program because of the lack of programs in Maryland that are flexible enough for a working professional to be able to access them and keep their job. I'll just be very, very blunt with it. There's not a lot. We do have, I know Mount St. Mary's has an online bachelor's degree to initial teacher certification, but there's not many. There's not many at all, and that really is a hurdle. And so that is, one thing that we do is we do push people into these out-of-state teacher prep programs because they're available and they fit that schedule. And I think that's why maybe that data has seen a little bit of a stability. While the in-state, we really would benefit from higher ed being more flexible as we try to grow our own and really have those folks keep their jobs as they go along.
Great. Thank you, Rob. Obianuju, I think you were next, and please correct me if I need it.
No, you said it right. This question is mainly directed towards Wales because I heard you mention something about how Washington County was like trying to develop a sense of a culture of inclusion with the teachers. So I was just wondering how like specifically you would implement that, because I'm from Carroll County, and at Carroll County there isn't a lot of diversity with the teachers. So like it's mainly like white staff that's working at the schools here. So I was just wondering, like, how specifically do you develop a culture of inclusion in your schools?
We may need a whole pillar working group just on this topic, but really quickly. So I work very closely with the supervisor of equity and excellence in the district, and we have a multiple point plan that she and I are working on sort of separately from the strategic plan that is also working on how every single team in the entire district can sort of support both student and staff efforts for being more inclusive. And so that will range everywhere from even embracing strategies in the classroom for diverse thought, diverse perspective. On one extreme, just even hearing student voice in school-wide decision making. And then also things on the other end of the spectrum would be sort of like what we're talking about with hiring. So things like panel conversations to bring multiple perspectives from the school into the hiring process. So it's not just the principal making a decision, but maybe there's a teacher. It could be an assistant principal. Like there's actually a committee of folks that are involved in the process. And so luckily we have this wonderful individual who's been working on culture of inclusion work with students for really several years already in the district. And so we're sort of building on that. So we're doing affinity groups and sort of doing what we would like to do is model at the staff level so that staff can then model that practice for their students. So affinity groups is one thing that we're starting, but it's so hard when you only have 4% of staff. It's such a small number that we're really starting out in baby steps. And a lot of it is even just inclusive language and inclusive spaces and just even acknowledging that this is a priority for the district is sort of where we're on step one. And so we have these, we have a whole plan of sort of where we're going. We have these training conversations that we're having with principals around what is a culture of inclusion, why is it important, and sort of have follow-up trainings, and sort of we're doing site visits where they can go to each other's school to sort of see some of this in practice and being able to share and celebrate best practices. But there are a lot of strategies that we're doing with student culture surveys, using student voice to then help drive change in schools and classrooms. But there's a lot of different culture plans that we've been using best practices from other districts to sort of build on, not just from a hiring standpoint, but the team is working on for student culture as well.
Great question, and thank you for those comments. So we are nearing these hour meetings always flash by. There's other things in my life that you feel every minute of the hour, but this is not one of them. This is great conversations. I did want to give a chance, Devora, if you wanted to unmute, any comments or reaction. Also, Board Member Robinson, if either of the two of you wanted to chime in.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to refer back to Patricia's comment. I think that a lot more practical considerations need to be put into the recruitment. And I'm saying that because I think the candidates or people that might consider teaching need access to resources. The salary, even though the blueprint is allowed for it to go up, the starting salary to $60,000 is still not a lot. People have to know, how they're going to live, how they're going to pay their bills, So those are my thoughts, like maybe to provide some kind of way, providing resources on housing, maybe services, in the area where people might be able to live, and things of those nature. Those are my thoughts.
And I guess my thoughts, I'll share in a moment, but before I do, just wanted to say thank you to the strategic facilitators for making the time to be here tonight. And also welcome to the new members of this Pillar 2 Advisory Committee. My thoughts, I guess I kind of wanted to reference something that Patricia said that kind of stood out to me. When she was talking about, her path to Maryland and the supports that were put in place for her, it made me start thinking about my path. And so I think I may have said this on this call before, or maybe it was just a general AIB meeting, I'm not sure. But when I think about, how we're increasing the diversity and the preparation of teachers in Maryland, I'm always an advocate for resident teacher programs because I came through one. But what I felt was special about my particular program was that it was sort of a hybrid program where you're not necessarily a teacher all day long. They allowed me to teach half-time and then spend the other half of the time, working on coursework, which was important. But I think the biggest thing that I did with that other bit of time was observing other teachers. And so I'm always a fan of any program that gives practical, like in the classroom observational experience, just seeing what other teachers do. I think that a lot of things that we learn in books are great, but teaching is not just science. It's very, very much an art. And so seeing how different teachers in my first school apply the pedagogical knowledge that I knew that we had, in my coursework, but they applied in their own particular context was very valuable for me. And so I think when we're talking about preparing candidates, I do think that an element of that has to be in schools and seeing what different teachers are doing with the with the research about how we know how students learn. So again, thank you to everyone who commented, and welcome to our new members. That's just my little 2 cents.
Great, thank you. And I'm going to throw it back to you, John. I just want to share just one quick thought that I had listening to our speakers. The idea of these stay interviews or stay conversations, that's really got me thinking. And I guess I'm thinking about how do you turn those comments into actionable data? Sometimes interviews get dismissed as anecdotal, oh, this person this or this person that. But if we really analyze what they're saying, can we turn that into something actionable? So I thought that was a new phrase for me, and it's got me thinking. So thank you for that, and I will pass it back to you, John.
All right. I just want to thank everybody for their time. Really want to thank the strategic advisors, because you provided such a on-the-ground perspective for our pillar. So thank you so much for that. As Brian said, that we could probably spend, multiple hours on this topic or lots of other topics. And I think that it's so important. I could see that as a committee that we could come together and talk about this. So thank you again for everybody's time, and everybody who was able to watch this online. And we look forward to having everyone join us at our next meetings. Thank you so much.